Good evening. Welcome back to Mo's channel. And today I'm going to proceed from the last video where I spoke about white history. Today I'm going to talk about real history, how things really happened and what really was. Once you understand real history, you'll understand the idea, the agenda between the white man rewriting history to favor himself. Now, I am a scientist. I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a bachelor's degree in economics. As a scientist, I cannot believe something to be fact unless and until it has been proven to be fact. That is a scientific method. If I postulate a theory of gravitation, then I have to conduct experiments to validate my theory. If those experiments do not validate my theory, then that theory is null and void. In light of that, this concept of a Big Bang, there was nothing, and then bang, there was everything, is extremely unscientific. Number one, out of nothing cannot come anything. Science understands that there must be something before for there to be something after. If there's nothing before, you cannot have anything after. If I don't have electrons and protons, I cannot have an atom. If I don't have atoms, I cannot have a molecule. If I don't have a hydrogen atom and an oxygen atom, I cannot have H2O, which is water. So this concept that once upon a time there was nothing, and then there was this big explosion, and all of a sudden there was everything, is bullshit. Any scientist who believes that is not a scientist. They are full of shit. Additionally, this notion that man came from animals, this notion of evolution, is also bullshit. Because, number one, you cannot validate evolution. You cannot conduct experiments that will prove without a fact that evolution is real. Number two, if evolution was real, and if we evolved from monkeys, then why the fuck do you still have monkeys running around? Why did some monkeys evolve into humans and other monkeys chose not to evolve? That's stupid. That is stupid. If I'm a monkey and I sit there and I see my cousin who used to be a monkey is now a man and he's walking around and living in a house and driving around in a car and he doesn't have to swing from tree to tree every goddamn day, why the fuck would I not evolve as well? So that's bullshit. Evolution is bullshit. The Big Bang Theory is bullshit. Anyone who believes that, anyone who teaches that, are full of shit. So that said, the universe, or what is, did not originate from some stupid little Big Bang. Number one. Number two, mankind did not originate from some amoeba or some fish or some toad or some reptilian or some goddamn monkey. If white people want to believe that shit, they could believe that shit. If white people want to believe they came from monkeys, go ahead, believe you came from monkeys. Go grab you a banana or something, eat that shit. Me? I didn't come from no goddamn monkey. I came from a human being. Asian people believe that. African people believe that. Native American people believe that. It is only white people who postulate this bullshit that they came from monkeys. Number two, This notion of being hunters and gatherers and living in caves and living in the wild and all that shit, bullshit. That might be where white people came from. It ain't where black people came from. It ain't where Asian people came from. It ain't where Native Americans came from. Now, I'm only speaking about 4 distinct races: black, Asian, Native American, and white. All other races, Indian, Arab, Latino, a derivative of these 4 primary races. So, from my perspective, those are the only 4 races. And you could even say the Native Americans, a derivative of black people and Asian people. So, therefore, you'd only have 3 races: black, white, and Asian. Having established that, let's move on. Now, it has been established that the first white person did not show up on this planet till 8,000 years ago. The white race is only 8,000 years old. That's not me saying it, that's archaeologists. The oldest fossil found in Europe that is related to white people is 8,000 years old. However, there were found in Europe fossils that predate 8,000 years that were black, not white. Let's now go back. We're not going to go back billions of years to the Big Bang. We're not going to go back to some little amoeba that decided to join with another amoeba. We're not going to go back to some fish that decided to become a lizard. We're going to go back to what is known and what can be proven. This is what is known. Egypt, otherwise known as Kemet, their civilization goes back 10,000 years. Egyptians, the people of Kemet, were black. They were not white. They were not Arab. The Arabs came along much, much later, about 500 years BC. Prior to that, it was all black. Now, Egypt originated from the south. South of Egypt, you have Abyssinia and Nubia. Together, they formed the Meroitic Sudan. Abyssinia is present-day Ethiopia. Nubia is present-day Sudan. Those were the forebearers of the Egyptians who were black. Given that Egypt goes back 10,000 years, it would be an intelligent assumption to state that Abyssinia and Nubia go back at least 15,000 years, which means that 15,000 years ago, black people in Africa had advanced civilizations, something that the Romans, the Greeks could never and would never achieve. Now, if you look at the map of Africa, you'll see the Nile River flowing into what I believe is the Red Sea. But the source of the Nile River is Lake Victoria, which is further south. Lake Victoria is surrounded by Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, and Rwanda and Burundi on this side. It is my postulation, and I say postulation because it has not been proven, but I'm quite sure that if archaeologists were to dig in that area around Lake Victoria in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, I am quite sure that they would uncover civilizations that go back 50,000 years ago. And these would be black civilizations. So, based on that assumption, we can then say that civilization started in Africa, right around Lake Victoria, and deeper down in South Africa, right around Southern Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe. That is where civilization started. It then moved up the Nile into Abyssinia, Nubia, and eventually into Egypt. So, 50,000 years ago, in Africa, you had civilized black people. Moved up in Abyssinia, into Nubia, into Egypt. Kemet, which started about 10,000 years ago, then branched out into Greece, into what's called Europe, into what's called Arabia, the Middle East, and into India. And these were colonies of Kemet. Black people colonized all of this. Now, if we go back even further, we have the migration of Africans out of Africa up into Asia. Now, out there in Asia, something might have happened, lack of sunlight, because Asian people do have melanin. And if Asian people sit in the sun long enough, they'll become dark-skinned. Look at Malaysians, look at Indonesians, look at Filipinos. So, due to a lack of sun, the black people that had migrated into Asia, China, and those regions lost some of their coloration, and they became yellow. What they call Asian people yellow, but they attained the same skin tone as what we see on Asian people today. In Indonesia and Malaysia, you'll actually find dark-skinned people that look black. If you go to India, the subcontinent of India, you find what are called the untouchables, the Dravidians. And these people are black. I've worked with Indians from India who speak Indian, Punjabi, Gujarati, all that shit. And I look at them and I'm like, if I take this motherfucking Indian to the hood, they'll fit right in. Because black people look at them and say, that's a nigga. That ain't no Indian. Until they open their mouth. I'm like, what's wrong with you, nigga? Why you talking like that? But they're Indian. I've met Indians that are as dark-skinned as me, except they have straight hair. So, while white people had not yet come to exist on this planet, Africans had migrated all over the world. The Egyptians had colonized the Middle East, Greece, India, and these black people were sailing from Africa to South America to Central America. In South America and Central America, you actually find the Olmecs, who predated the Native Americans, and you have these huge statues, these big heads that have Africoid features. Black people. Before Columbus discovered America, black people were sailing back and forth to America from Africa. Let's move on. Now, within Egypt, you had the mystery system. This was their higher learning, their advanced knowledge. Within this mystery system, you had something called the laws of Maat, M-A-A-T. You had the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You had people like Imhotep, a great scientist, who is the father of modern day medicine, a black man. You had engineering, you had science, you had literature. All of the things that white people claim were founded by the Greeks were founded by the Egyptians. The Egyptians who colonized Greece and passed this knowledge on to the white people in Greece. Now, you have modern technology such as airplanes and things of that nature, automobiles. But when you go back and you study the hieroglyphs and you study the art that is found in ancient Egypt and Kemet, you'll find depictions of modern day travel by airplane. You'll find depictions of the light bulb, electricity. You'll find depictions of automobiles, of plumbing systems. So, once again, I don't have proof of this, but it is my supposition that the archaeologists, when they went down into Egypt and they unearthed these things, this information, some of it was taken and kept secret. And over time, it has been reverse engineered to give us modern technology. But this modern technology is actually ancient technology that has been reverse engineered to be brought to light today as a new invention. When it is not a new invention, these were things that were discovered, invented by Africans thousands of years ago and are now manifest today as new inventions by white people. If we move on, Greece was founded by black people. The first emperors of Rome were black. So this notion that white civilization, white men discovered Rome and Greece is nonsense. They just rewrote that to reflect positively on themselves. Religion. You have to go back to Egypt and study the story of Anu, Isis, Osiris, Horus. That is a story of the Trinity. That is the story of Cain and Abel. That is the story of the Christ who was killed and rose again. But even if you take it back further, you'll understand that all these stories came from the sky, astrology. After summertime in the northern hemisphere, the sun starts to descend south to the southern hemisphere. On December 25th, the sun drops to the lowest point south, and it stays there for 3 days, and then it starts to rise once again. So the sun dies for 3 days, and then it resurrects. As in, Jesus died for 3 days, and he resurrected. Everything in religion is written in the skies. Everything in religion is based off astrology. I will not go into a lot of depth on this right now. I just refer you to YouTube. There are many videos out there that talk about the Egyptian mystery system, that talk about Medu Neter, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, that talk about Isis, Osiris, Horus, Anu. There are many videos out there, there are many books out there that talk about ancient Africa, Dr. Ben Buchanan, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Chancellor B. Williams, Dr. Ivan van Sertima, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. I recommend that you do your own research and dig deeper into this to understand it. If we move on further down the road, Europe was a backward, uncivilized, savage, barbaric place. When the Moors, who were black men from Morocco, came into Spain, they found the Spanish to be backward and savage. The Spanish did not take baths. The Spanish were living like animals. The Spanish were illiterate. The Moors built schools, they built universities, and they built bathhouses and made it mandatory that the Spanish should take a bath at least once a day. The Moors, black men, came into backward Europe and civilized the Europeans. This was around 800 AD until about 1300 AD. In China, about 4,000 years ago, the Chinese began their civilization. They began their dynasties. In Japan, the Japanese began their civilization. This was at a time when the Europeans were trapped up north of the Caucasus Mountains because of this huge ice age, and they were isolated from the rest of humanity. And therefore, they were living in caves, they were living like savages, they were living backwards. Around 1400, 1450 AD, the time Columbus sailed, you have Vasco da Gama, all these guys, they obtained their navigation maps from the Moors in Spain, who obtained their navigation maps from the Egyptians and others. So, had it not been for the Moors, the Europeans never would have been able to sail beyond Europe, because prior to then, the Europeans would only sail close to the shoreline so they could see the shoreline, because they had no idea how to navigate in the open ocean. So, black people civilized Europeans at a time when Europe was backward, when Europeans were throwing trash out the window, when Europeans were taking shits on the side of the road like animals. In Africa, you had the Kingdom of Mali, Zimbabwe, Songhai, Timbuktu, Ghana, Abyssinia, Nubia, and I could go on. These kingdoms were so advanced, with such a high level of civilization and learning and culture, that when the first Europeans came to Africa, it blew their mind, because they were living like savages, and they came to these Africans. These Africans were so much more advanced than them. It blew their mind. When the first Europeans came to the Americas and they found the Native Americans, unlike the stories that we're told, Columbus came in and found all these savages. When Columbus came to America and found these Native Americans, they had a much higher level of sophistication than the Europeans. A much higher level of sophistication. When the Europeans first went into China, Japan, and encountered the Japanese and the Chinese, these people were far more advanced than the Europeans. So up until 1600, the rest of the world was advanced and Europe was backward. That is the reality. Now, it is my supposition that when the white man sailed around the world and saw and realized that everyone else was significantly more advanced than he was, his heart burned with envy and jealousy. And it is my supposition that the only reason the white man destroyed so many people, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Native Americans, the Africans, the Indians in the subcontinent, is because all these people were far more advanced than the white man was. And it was out of his jealousy that he wreaked so much havoc on these people. But why is that? Why is that? In the days of old, the Japanese fought each other, the Chinese fought each other, the Africans fought each other, the Native Americans fought each other. But they were not as bloodthirsty, they were not as vicious, they were not as violent as the white people who fought each other in Europe, who fought each other in World War I, who fought each other in World War II. Why is that? There's something wrong with the white man. And to understand that, we have to ask ourselves, where did the white man come from? Remember, they don't show up but 8,000 years ago. Where did they come from? I honestly do not believe the white people are the same as Asians or black people. I'll tell you why. Once upon a time, my mother was telling a story to me about how white people embarked on a mission to prove that black people were less evolved than white people. Now, their methodology was based on the premise that, well, we evolved from monkeys. Humans evolved from monkeys. So if we could show that black people have more commonality with monkeys than white people, then we've proven our point. So they set about black person, white person, monkey. Let's compare. Well, they said, okay, monkeys have a lot of bodily hair. Well, let's see. Black people don't have a lot of bodily hair. White people have a lot of bodily hair. Okay. Monkeys have a flat behind. Okay, black people don't have a flat behind. White people have a flat behind. Okay? If you shave the hair off of a monkey, the monkey's white. Monkeys have thin lips. Black people have full lips. White people have thin lips. After a while, these scientists, these white scientists realize, you know what? White people have more similarities to monkeys than black people do. So they killed that study. Said, fuck that shit. Fuck that. You read where white people claim they came from Neanderthals. They descended from Neanderthals. I've read somewhere that Neanderthals mated with humans at some point in time. Neanderthals were found in Europe, Northern Europe, the cold climates. Neanderthals have a lot of hair on their bodies. Neanderthals have thin noses. Neanderthals walk like white people. I will postulate this. White people are the descendants of crossbreeding between Neanderthals and human beings. Therefore, white people are not fully human. They're half animal, half human. Think about that. During slavery, it was declared that black people were 3/5 human beings. But if white people are crossbred, Neanderthal and human being, then really it's white people that are 3/5 human being and not black people. That would explain why white people do not have DNA. Do not have melanin in their system, which necessitates that they drink vitamin D enriched milk because their bodies cannot transform the ultraviolet radiation from the sun into vitamin D. And vitamin D is crucial for bone health. That explains why white people like to eat their meat raw. They're the only culture, the only race on the planet who like to eat their meat raw. That would explain why white people are so violent and so bloodthirsty. That's an animal trait. That's a Neanderthal trait. That would explain why white people believe in shit like evolution and all this other nonsense. And that would explain the jealousy that white people had when they saw everyone else so much more advanced than they were. When you start to look at things from a realistic perspective, when you do away with the bullshit, with the lies, and you focus on the truth and the realities, an entirely different picture emerges. What does this mean then? I've read in places where Greece did not even exist, as it is said to have existed, where Greece is all made up. As indicated, the founders of Rome were black. Within Europe, if you go back to the early part of last century, of the last millennium, 500, 600, 800 AD, you will find that the kings and queens of Europe, the people who founded Europe, were black men and women. The real history underscores the fact that white people never created shit. White people never invented shit. The assembly line, which Henry Ford used, he got that from George Washington Carver. The telephone, supposedly invented by Alexander Graham Bell, I have very strong reason to believe that his black assistant, Latimer, invented that. Electricity. I have very strong reason to believe that Edison's black assistant invented that. The refrigeration car, the traffic light, open heart surgery, preservation of blood, the cotton gin. So many things were invented by black people. Gunpowder, invented by Chinese. And I could go on and on and on. All of these white scientists, Newton, Galileo, all of these guys, all of their discoveries were actually known during the time of the Egyptians, during the time of the Abyssinians. In the Bible, they say Moses was white, Abraham was white, Noah was white, Jesus was white. No. All of the people in the Bible, all of the people in the Bible were black. And if you want to know what they look like, go look at an Ethiopian. Go look at an Ethiopian. That is how all the people in the Bible look like your modern day Ethiopian. If you want to know how Abraham looked like, how Noah looked like, Jesus, go look at an Ethiopian. The first Christian church was the Ethiopian Coptic Church. The first Christian church. The first bishops of Catholicism were Ethiopian. We have been lied to. The whole world has been lied to. Asian people have been lied to. Latino people have been lied to. Arab people have been lied to. Indian people have been lied to. Black people have been lied to. The reality is, the white man ain't shit but a big motherfucking lie. When you understand that, when you realize that, that takes a massive, significant chunk out of the claim for white supremacy. Thank you very much. The next video, I will now look at the white mentality as promoted through the media. Thank you, God bless, and good night.